Alright, welcome back to part 5 of this tutorial on how to paint a character. And where we are now is arguably, I think, the hardest part. This is the part where it's no longer exactly straightforward. Where, okay, well, we had to do, the shirt, we had to do the fur, we had to do, certain colors for certain areas. Now we kind of need to decide what our details are going to be, how many details we're going to have, and I find this part to be the most difficult part, and it's where motivation can kind of go by the wayside because it is just kind of hard to figure out what point you really want to stop. So what I've decided to do first here is the hands, and they're going to be relatively simple. I'm just going to hide my normal map, and I'll put the hands on a new layer. And what I'm going to do is decide on the color for the skin. Now I'm not going to have the fur go all the way down the ends of the fingers, but I'm going to have maybe a little bit of fur on the tops of the fingers. And I'm also going to show another method of creating fur that actually it takes quite a bit longer, but in combination with using a fur stencil it can work out pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the stamp here on the paintbrush, and we're going to use this stamp here, which is the Bristol 2. If I move this over here and highlight there, you can see that it comes with Mudbox, so it's just a standard stamp. And let's get that lined up there, and we're going to pick this stamp, and we are not going to randomize it. And what I'm going to do, actually before I do that, let's get a base color of his skin, and I want it to be slightly pink, but I also want it to be pretty desaturated, mostly gray. I have had a rat pet in the past when I was young, and they have pretty much gray skin, and you can see that it's giving me a sharp terminated angle there. Very hard transition to the fur that's on the hands, but that's okay. So just going to get kind of a coating of gray on here. I'm not sure what that is there. Let's make sure that it's not on every layer, on like a visual glitch. We'll make sure it is a map. It's going to be something that's black. So let's hide the teeth, the eyes, socks. Just do these one at a time. I'll highlight the layer before I hide it, that way it doesn't reorder my list. Okay, so it's the sole of the boot. So easy enough to erase that. And then I can just hide diffuse and unhide, hide it and then unhide it, and it'll bring all the layers back. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create. I'm going to rename this layer. I'm going to call this hands skin, and then I'm going to make a new layer on top of that. I'm going to call that hand fur. And so with this stamp here, let's check our spacing. It's pretty low. I'm going to sample the color from the fur, and the eyedropper tool is number 3. And what's nice about that is if you hit 3 and then you sample your color, it automatically puts you back on your other brush. And now what I can do is take a smaller brush, and let's knock our strength down, and I actually want my fall off to be very soft. I still feel that this is a little large, so let's check our advanced settings. Here we go. We don't have any pressure sensitivity, so I'm going to put the size up to about 15. I don't want it to go too small because I'm going to end up with just kind of like pixelated garbage, but I want my strength to be pretty low. And now I'm going to do a series of light strokes, not too light. Let's go to flat lighting so we can see this. And I'm just going to kind of fan these out. Again, keeping in mind that I am at a slight bit of lower resolution. Just gonna fade that. Okay, I do need to page up to get a higher resolution geometry because I'm having the issue where it's not painting in certain parts. And you can see that it's a little lower res there at the also, I'm not following my stroke. I don't really need to undo this because it's going to get overdone, overwritten for the most part. So just along this edge, I am letting the fur go to a little bit on his palms. Not because he's a sinner, but just because I kind of want a little bit of blend, almost like it's a glove or a sleeve of fur. Let's boost up our strength a little bit so we're not having to go over this too many times. I don't want to get tired. And what you can do is you can kind of fan some out in different directions. And obviously this is just one tone. Go pretty fast here. Actually, the faster you do this, obviously the faster it goes, but at the same time, the cleaner your hairlines will actually be. Okay, and I'll start a few in the back. Now let's try to sample a darker color. I'll just find one like there. You can see it's picked that up nicely. And we'll just go over this. Now, this fur method could have been used across the entire rat character, but by the time you're done, you'd have to go to the hospital pretty much for your hand. You have to get it repaired because it is pretty tiring. It's a little taxing. It's a lot of really fast movement that goes on for quite a little bit. And you can see this small area that I'm doing, and I already have, you know, a good 200 to 300 paintbrush applications here. I try to avoid using the word strokes because it's too many connotations there that can be made fun of, I guess. So it's coming out, I think, all right. I definitely want to make sure that my eyeball can no longer see that hard seam anymore. Show wireframe. And let's start trailing that. Actually, let's get rid of the wireframe. So I'm doing a few that are kind of like curved to the left, and then from the same center line I'm going to do a few that are curved to the right. Alright, let's pick up a lighter color now. I'm keeping these a little bit shorter. Again, our resolution isn't great, but he is going to be from a distance. You notice that I'm kind of, I'm saying that a lot. It's not an excuse. It's actually part of what we're doing here. we don't really want a ton of resolution. Yeah, I mean, if this was a movie, I wouldn't be painting fur on him at all. I might to get an underlying base layer, but I'd be using an actual fur plugin, you know. So he'd have real hairs. And just go over a little bit here so it's not so perfectly discernible that the hairs are, you know, two different colors. Kind of want to make it look still like a random mess. There go the dogs. That's fun. I'm going to pause. Alright, I think they've calmed down. Sample another color here. Strike it maybe a medium. I didn't really hit anything different. A little bit darker. All right. Just extend that just a hair. Ah, a hair. Alright, and I think that's okay. Now let's just, while we're here and have these brush settings, let's kind of give it a bit of a treatment on some of this other fur to maybe help mask that seam a little bit better. I still don't have the ability to paint very good right there. And what I'm going to do here is actually kind of just fan out a couple of hairs on here to help blend. Let's hit 3 and get this dark color here. And I'm going to stay pretty light. If I go too dark here, it's going to be really, really obvious. So just kind of give a bit of an outward blend coming out from this ear. That'll work a few wonders, and I'll cover some spots that I missed. The other idea that you can go with is to go to your projection brush and grab your stencil again, which is here somewhere. Stencils need to load the first time, so it lags when you drag your little scroll bar there. So let's find the fur, and now I can hit Q, and let's turn it on. Okay, I had to pick a different stamp because that was the last stamp loaded in memory. Sometimes it won't show up, and if that happens, just pick any other stamp and then go back to it. And then just I think I forgot to mention this S. When you hold down the S key, your left mouse will move it, and I think that's right mouse or middle mouse will scale it, and the other one, you know, middle will move it. It's hard for me to remember because I'm using a pen tablet. Got buttons on the pen. But what you can do is with the projection brush, you can assign a stencil and a stamp. So if I assign the same stamp that I was using, now what this is going to do is get a little bit flashy, and by flashy I mean the screen is going to start flashing, because if you see, I can do some of these fixes using the stamp, and that'll get, you can see it's a little bit more noticeable that there's hairs there. So say I wanted to fix some areas, but I didn't want it to be too much coverage. I just wanted to throw a little bit more randomization in there. I can use this stamp. Now like I said, you can see that that might be in a bit of a bad direction. That every time you do this, the stencil flashes off and on. There is a setting for that. If you go to stencils here and I just click it, it'll bring up the options. And let me shrink this some. Hide when sculpt. If you turn that off, it won't actually do that. But when it doesn't do that, then you can't really see what you're doing too much, to be honest. So you can maybe lower your visibility a little bit, but then you can't really see your stamp. So it's a bit of a memory game. You gotta kind of just go with what you pre-visualize it needs. So again, what I like to do is just move something out of the way and put the stamp in a nice, I can't really tell what's what here, but I can tell nicely and easily what's going on here. So let me find some pretty even part of it, and and then you hit Q to kind of test what you did, see if you passed. So this is a pretty nice way. Let me get the angle good and then move it over. To come in and add a little bit more fine detail to what you've done. And this gives a nice double random action, basically. The randomness of the stamp and the randomness of the stencil are coming into play. I want to get rid of that line there. Just grab a different color part of the fur. Everything else I think is still okay, but I could feather some out from the eyes to get them a little bit more detailed, so I'm going to move the eyes out of the way and find a good spot for that. And I'm kind of liking this area of dark fur. So let's try to get the angle right. I'm picturing that the eyeball is going to be right here. And then what I'm doing is I'm angling it until I feel that the fan out of the fur feels like a good direction. And then I'm going to click where I think the eyeball is and put it there. And also, if I hit 2, I get my options here. I want to turn on the fall off based on angle because I don't want it to go to the back faces here. Hit Q and see how it's coming out. Okay, I think so far it's okay. That does help to blend the eyes in a little bit better. I'm going a little bit lighter there. Just wanted to kind of make sure that that fur is swooping outwards there. I don't really like right here. I feel it looks a little low res, so I'm going to go across that spot there a little bit. Let me move this out of the way so I can make sure my direction's good. Let's do a little bit there. And a little bit down there. The main thing here is I want to try to just get rid of any spots that they don't look like fur. They look like, you know, just a blotch of color. Even though it reads okay from a distance, and the off chance that, you know, I say, hey, well, what about if we make this guy more prominent, you know? I don't want to. I can take care of as much as I can here. It's going to be better. Alright. Could do the legs too. You can see I got a couple of fur lines here that are pretty much going the wrong way, so let's put the stamp here, and let's just just a little bit on his knees. Let's darken up his knees a little bit. Let's move this, I'd say, to about there. Probably a little too dark. So we'll go over that with some lighter. In doing this, it helps me be a little bit less careful. And again, you can see I got some parts I really can't paint on. That's because the UVs are messed up. But at this point, I'm just going to go with it. Again, I wasn't planning on showing the UV stuff. I don't want this series to take too long. Again, this character was modeled just eons ago. That's why it's got a lot of problems. It wouldn't have today if I remodeled him. But at the same time, I think he's perfectly usable. Let's get a little bit here. Alright, enough with the sidetracking. Let's get back to the hands. So I got his fur on his hands, and I'm gonna actually do a little bit more with the stencil brush here and the projection tool. I don't want it to look like, oh, it's, you know, short and matted and then all of a sudden I got nice flowy perfect fur. Just kind of want to break that up with a little bit of matting. If you hit F on something, it'll make your camera rotation that center. It's pretty handy. I may sound a little tired. It's early for me in the morning. I haven't fully woken up yet. And by early, I mean it's like 1 o'clock. I do work late. All right, I'm getting the sniffles. So let's call the fur done. Hopefully I wasn't on the wrong layer. Yay. Okay, so hand skin. So what I'm going to do for the hand skin is go with a different stamp. And this stamp is another stamp that is standard to Mudbox, and it is this one here, the BW_dots. Okay, black and white dots. So I'm going to pick that. I am now going to turn on randomize. I'm going to give myself a pretty wide spacing. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sample the color from the hands. Then I'm going to click it and I am just going to brighten it a little bit. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, is that even doing anything? Let's boost my strength. Let's see if this brush is even doing anything. It is. Okay. I'm going to give him spotty skin by literally just painting dots. Now again, I don't have a lot of resolution. My playable characters, you know, the one-player arms and whatnot, this is a lot sharper and cleaner. I'm just wanting to throw in some tone here. He's got tone! That's a Iceman joke. You're dangerous. Alright, we're gonna go here. Let's make this spacing a little bit smaller so I don't have to scrub as much. Get a few more dots in there. Au natural. I did forget to turn off fall off based on angle for the one brush, which does that for all brushes. Just keep that in mind. This can actually be used on human characters, but you need a very light touch when you do this. Around the face and the nose and down the arms and whatnot. Using this spot method can help break things up. But like I said, it's not something that you want to go real heavy on. You don't want your character looking like an alien, you know. But in this case, it's a rat. And as far as I'm concerned, I think they probably are aliens. Even though I don't believe in aliens. Or ghosts. Or magic. Or monsters. If there was one thing I wish there existed, it would be monsters. So pretty good spot treatment. Like he's a carpet that's been cleaned. And now what I'm going to do is darken it. And do the same thing with a little bit smaller of a brush. So what we have is a basic gray tone. And we've got some light spots. And now we've got some dark spots. And the dark spots I'm only going to do on the tops of the fingers. Kind of running them a little bit more heavy down the top center of the finger. I am using flat lighting here. Just have to right click to get that option up. I find it's easier to see what you're doing. This isn't, you know, gonna look too like photoreal or anything. Obviously it's not gonna look really photoreal at all, but the game here is still pretty much cartoony, but you can get a pretty real looking set of textures if your resolution is good enough. You know, your UVs are laid out. Like if I had split the hands to their own UV tile and then used like a 4096, obviously this would be hyper clean. Do a little on his palm, very sharp, which would actually be a little less forgiving. Each dot wouldn't be so fuzzy, so it would take me being a little bit more careful with where I place it. But in this case, I think we're okay. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to sample the color from the tail, get a little pink in here, and go through the bottoms of his fingers. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a heavier touch, which just means I'm scribbling faster. To get more coverage. I could alleviate a little bit of that by bringing down my spacing, so I don't have to go as fast. Get the inside of his thumb here. So just using a couple different colors, I just basically broke it up into real spotty rat skin. There was a show that my buddy was telling me about where some comedians were asked to say 3 words that would make a person cringe, and my idea was grandma tongue kiss, but another one that I just thought of would be rat skin sandwich. Would that be gross? Alright. Alright, I think that's not too bad. Now let's do the same kind of treatment on the tail. So I've already got the pink, so if I paint there, it's just not going to do anything. So I'm going to do a lighter tone here. I'm going to increase my brush size just a bit. Now this is going to be a little bit hard to see, but it is there. You can hear my scratchy old tablet going to work. Let's bring up the wireframe. Even though it's going to make it impossible to see, I just have to kind of remember what parts I've done. Just give it a general coat. Alright, let's get a little bit more of a dominant color going on here. Let's go relatively dark. Okay, let's hit F there. Now, I don't think I really need the wireframe too much anymore. So the top of his tail is going to be a little bit darker. I'm going to tap Alt a couple of times every time I finish with a scrubbing, just to make sure that the mirroring is updated. I don't want this to be too uneven, but at the same time I don't want to exactly be super even. How it's kind of given me a few darks, lights will actually work to my advantage to help break it up a little bit. I did segment his tail in the normal map, and I'm probably going to bring that up here in a second. Just see it. Alright, let's get the underside. A lot lighter here. I don't want to go dark on the bottom, but I do want some tone here. Let's darken up to the end of his tail just by hitting that a little bit more than the rest. I really wish that the Space Mouse would work nicely here. It doesn't work too bad, but when I let it go, it keeps going. That's the problem. Alright, let's go back to our light color. Let's get pretty light there, almost all the way to the bottom. And let's hide the grid too. And let's kick up our power, our strength. And now let's zoom in and see what we're looking at. So again, just a bunch of spots. Nothing fancy. Nothing complicated. And now let's come out of flat lighting and let's show our normal map. And let's pick like a much deeper tone, and we'll go dark. It's almost purpley. And let's just go along the insides of these dips here. That'll help further define the segmentation in the tail. Gives a bit of a darkness in the wrinkle there. I'm actually applying it lighter and lighter and lighter as I get out to the end, because the tip of the tail is not going to bend as much as the base would. Again, I'm keeping myself on the higher res mesh so I don't have to worry about it not painting in parts. Alright, let's call that. I don't want to go too crazy with it. Let's go back to flat lighting. Alright, let's see what we can do with his eyes really quick. I'm not real sure what to do here. Let's give him green eyes. Okay, we're not using any stamp. I'm going to use a hard fall off. And let's just see what our resolution's looking like. It's not too bad, and the reason is because if you look at the unwrap, I made his eyes bigger so that I could get a little bit more out of it. That's where most of the expression is going to lie. So if I want his eyes green, let's undo that. I'm actually going to knock spacing off, and when you knock spacing off, all you have to do is tap. And let's pull the strength to about 90, the minimum size to about 20. That way, just even the lightest tap is gonna, if I tap harder, it's gonna get bigger. But what I want to do first is actually tap with black. Actually, I'll go ahead and keep that off center. So let's get that large. Okay, he's going to have real big eyes. And now we'll go with the green. Let's keep it pretty minty. Try to keep it concentric. This is a skill here, to tap in the same concentric spot and increase pressure and not go too much and not lose your center too much. It can be a little hard. Okay. Just want to give it so that there's a rim. Let's go back to black. And I haven't changed the size of my brush. If you're using a mouse, obviously you're going to need to resize your brush. Okay, that's good. And now let's go to white and shrink the brush and go off center and just pull out a couple of, let's do that opposite there and like that. Let's undo that one. Alright, now we're going to go back to a stamp here. Same one I used for the fur. And I'm going to go with black. Let's go down here and pop the minimum strength to 0. Minimum size can be the same. And I probably should have done this before I did the white spots, but I can reapply those. And I don't have a lot of resolution here. Oops, undo. I think I know what's going on. I gotta get off of randomize. So going from the outside in, And being that I don't have a ton of resolution, I don't really want to go too crazy on this part. Now let's see what happens if I blur that part. I don't want to blur the very outer ring. Okay, now what I want to do is take this green color and lighten it and saturate it a little bit more, and just kind of scrub a little bit irregularly here down the middle, and then blur that some. Hit W to get rid of the wireframe. Don't need that. Alright, and then let's put back our hot spots. Make that a little bit bigger so I can. It went a little bit too big. Here we go. There we go. I like it. Alright, let's go to fur here. And make a new layer, and we're going to call this lips. And let's make the lips the same color as the fingers. Gray. And what I'm going to do is hit Alt V and just hide some of this geometry. So that it's not really in my way. I'm going to tap V so that I can make that brush bigger. And then I'm going to hide the whiskers and the nose. It's a little bit hard to do that from a distance, being that it's so small. So I'll just hide that. Okay, let's also actually get his eyes, his ears. Let's hide all that. Alright. Let's look at the wireframe. Okay, he's got a roof of his mouth here. Now this is going to be a little tricky to get to, so I'm going to shrink my brush, and then I'm going to try to miss it, and I'm going to try to get inside here, because, well, I guess I can see it like this. So let me increase the brush size. It does allow to pick back faces, which can be handy. If you want to deselect it, is Control. So I want to get rid of that like that. Staying pretty light here. So we hide that. Missed a few. I wouldn't notice that unless I spun my camera a little bit so I can see that geometry. It's floating overhead, moving overhead. So I'm going to hide that. Alright. So on the same layer as the lips, I'm just going to do the mouth. So before... Actually, let me just plop down an area of color there so I can sample it again later. And now let's figure out what color do we want the inside of his mouth to be. And I'm going to go with a bit of a slightly bluish red. You can see it's a little bit tipped. Just a hair. It's mostly in the red, but I'm up here in the upper quadrant. I'll go with that color there. I need to pull my... If you don't have any stamp spacing, Mudbox actually doesn't like that. It's good for doing a spot, but it is not good for painting broad areas. You can see even with a spacing of 10 that I've got a lot more coverage, better coverage with my application here than I do with no spacing at all, because it's basically... like, what is it going to do? With no spacing, it's saying, oh, well, every stroke's in the exact same spot. Even a 0 spacing, you would think, well, that's the exact same spot. But no, it's still, like if I go 0, my coverage is clean. But if I go no stamp spacing, it's all spotty and weird. The math is off. So I'm just filling in there. Now let's take a look at my unwrap layout here and see if I can't just fill in some of that. Okay, there's the lips. I didn't have the foresight. I thought I would have. I'd hoped I would have to split the lips off onto their own UV so I have a sharp edge, but oh well, I suck. So the mouth coverage is good. Now let's just get this and sample that color, and we'll just go by... I'm going to go with a little bit of a smaller brush here and try to match that geometry line there. It is going to be kind of low resi, and it doesn't want to paint in some parts because it needs a little bit more hidden. So hide that. This can be a bit of a chore. But another thing I can do to help this problem is come down and do the fall off based on angle so it doesn't want to paint on the back surfaces. So I'm going to go about halfway out here. I don't give him a top lip. None of my rat characters have that top lip in there. They only have the bottom lip. That's by design. So now I can sample the mouth and kind of almost pixel paint here. Try to line up these jaggies, but alright, let's unhide all and see what we're looking at. Just gonna get rid of this part here. Alright. And now, I'll just do it on the same layer as the hands and I'll rename this like fur blends so I don't get confused. And let's go back to our projection brush by hitting 2, Q, and I still have my stamp on here. And let's move him out of the way. And I'm gonna do upturned fur here. And let me hide his toofus. Hide. Oop. Hit U. A. I think I hit hide twice. Hide. And then wait. Okay. Patience. Oh, you notice how when I came back to this that my brush was the right size. There's a setting. I actually think I have it off. No, it's not on. But remember, size is a good thing to check off on a lot of your brushes. Just so that if you need to swap brushes, that when you come back, it's... Just get rid of the fall off based on angle. And I'm just doing a little bit of fur overlap. Up onto his lip. It's very low res here. So I'll have to do a few applications in order to make any of this really discernible. Let's change direction. So just a little bit of crossover there helps to blend that in from a distance. It reads okay from out here. However, I could use a little bit of help there. Alright. Let's make a new layer. Ears. Okay, I'm going to make his ears the same color as the tail. Just going to fill in the area where I didn't like it. Show my wireframe. Let's get in a little bit closer. Try to make a little bit more of an even circle here. Alright, and let's go back to our fur blends. And let's blend that in. I'm going to go with a bit of a longer blend up in the middle here. Alright, now I'm actually going to switch back to the paintbrush tool. Put my stamp on. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I need to give myself a little bit more spacing. It's a little too strong. This is kind of where the fur is changing from vertical to horizontal, so it's kind of changing direction on me, so that blend can be a little bit difficult. At some point you gotta pick like a colic for that. Inside the wire. Sample a new darker color. Kind of come to the point there before I change direction. Alright. And from a distance, that'll, I think, read okay. That's about all I'm actually going to do to the ears. I want them to be pretty cartoony. Alright. So we are almost at an hour here. Let's drop him down. He's starting to somewhat come together. He still needs a bit of a specular map and bump map treatment. But the good news is we're not going to have to do an awful lot of painting for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop this part, and then on the next part we'll come back and we'll do the specular and bump map, and I believe that'll actually be all he needs. Alright, well, I'll see you in the next part.